Hello and welcome to Not Without My Sister, where, as you may have noticed, we have switched our upload day from Tuesday to Wednesday for boring logistical reasons you don't need to know. But thank you all for being with us. And a little reminder that if you subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/notwithoutmysister, your pledge will go towards helping the people of Ukraine. And we will also meet it. So you pledge $5, we will donate $10 to the people of Ukraine, and you will get a back catalogue of almost 40 exclusive episodes. You'll get all of your weekly episodes ad-free, and you'll get a new episode every Friday. So it's a win-win, win-win-win. I'm Rosemary McCabe. I'm joined by my sister Beatrice McCabe, and today we are talking about
The Great Resignation.
The Great Resignation, in a resigned tone.
The Great Resignation, and how, as a friend of mine pointed out the other day, which was it? Was it looking for a job or recruiting is a bit like online dating? Wasn't that it?
Yeah, but I mean, it can apply both ways, right? So, like, looking for a job or looking for an employee is a bit like online dating. That you're dating. All like,
it's a bit like dating. Maybe.
Yes, you're all putting dating. Your best foot forward.
Well, you are, but you're also maybe not representing your true self.
Oh, 100%.
And if you're you or you're me, you don't actually realize it's a two-way street. You think that you're only pitching yourself, but in fact, you should also be evaluating whether this other individual / company is a good match for you.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, because I was going to, I go into dates and interviews going, I really hope they like me. And it never occurs to me like, I really hope I like them. Or I'm interested to see if I like them. It's like, I already really like them. I really want this job. I really want this date. I really want this boyfriend. And I hope that he feels the same or they feel the same. And as well, like, this is actually, I was talking to a friend of mine this week who was saying that she was considering applying for a job at, I think it was at like a coffee shop at home anyway, irrelevant. And she was saying, like, I just really want to do something where I'm going to meet people and get out of the house. She was like, it's a pity you can't write that on a cover letter. And I was like, it is a pity. And I wonder what would happen if you applied for a job and wrote in the cover letter, like, I just want to get out, want to get out of the house. I want to meet some people, have some social interactions and earn some money. And I'd like to do it at your establishment.
Well, I mean, I think her thing was also like, I think this, we had this conversation because I said, like, so much of, you're kind of, you tick off a checklist of like, I want you to be this and I need to have this skill and I want to, you need to be able to, some of the basics, use Microsoft Office. Like, I can't believe people are still putting that on resumes. I'm an expert in Microsoft Office.
I can't believe I'm still putting I'm an expert in Microsoft Office on my resume.
Oh,
because
I probably still have it on mine, in fairness.
I cannot use Excel to save my life.
Oh, well, I mean, but like,
I've never had to.
You could learn it relatively quickly if you need to, right? That's part of a resume as well. As I feel like I put things on there that I go, I have a relatively good grasp. But if it was required, could learn it overnight.
Conversational Spanish.
Over a weekend.
I've got conversational Spanish.
Well, no, it could become fluent over the weekend if it needed to,
exactly.
Right? So it's like, if you have X skill and Y skill and Z skill, and I kind of go, yeah, check. But then, like, what I really want to know is, will this person be relatively low maintenance? And like, and not, like, what's the correct term? Not like doolally. What's the right term?
Not entirely unreliable and unpredictable.
Well, I mean, so I'll give you an example of somebody, right, who I hired this individual. I read a term for it there, like, this weekend. What was I reading? Oh, I was reading an excellent book called The Runner, right? No, like high drama thriller.
I think you talked about this book the other day.
The one that I was like, oh, must be new, but actually was written in 2014.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
But in it, anyway, your man goes, what we at the FBI called SHB, standard human behavior, right? Or standard human bullshit. Sorry, not even standard human behavior. And I was like, I relate to that, as I'm sure does every single other person in the world. But it was like, it's not to do with this, department or this department. It's like standard human bullshit. And I remember once I said to Dad, I think I've said this before, but I was like bemoaning the fact that I manage creative people, even though I myself am a creative person. I was like, God, like, they're very high maintenance, and they want a lot of things, and they're very emotional, and they come to me with all their problems, and I was like, I think it's because they're creative. And I was not, Dad, I was like convinced, I was like, it's not because they're people, it's because they're creative. And Dad's like, that's because they're people. He goes, like, I've worked in computers all my life, and it's the exact same. There's no difference. That's people. And I honestly remember going, he does not have a clue. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Understand.
Yeah. And I put it in the box of, like, It's not a very full box, but I put it in the box of Dad doesn't know what he's
Dr.
talking
Dad.
about. No, yeah, exactly.
Dr. Dad's box of bullshit.
Dr. Dad's box of absolute nonsense, exactly. I opened the lid. I fought with all the contents in there.
Sorry,
I
Mary
slammed it
Poppins.
shut.
I can't believe you had to correct my dad's box of bullshit to Dad's box of absolute nonsense. What the hell?
What did I call it? Standard human bullshit. I just don't want to use the word too often. You know, you were diluting the resonance of it. Anyway, in this book, it's like standard human bullshit. And I was like, God, that really encapsulates a lot of things. But like, honestly, so anyway, I hired this one. I was like, she's brilliant. She's so creative. She was very creative, which like, again, great. Like, what is that bullet point? What should that bullet be called? Low maintenance. I'm writing this down actually for like, so I can put it in job descriptions, go forward. Low maintenance. And it doesn't mean like, don't come to me if there are problems. It's like, understand what to elevate. I'm writing this down actually. I mean, that's why I can't really multitask.
Works on one's own initiative. Because I think as a manager, like you want to hire someone you can trust to do the job you designate to them, rather than them come back to you with every step going, is this okay? Is this okay?
Well, a lot of people, I mean,
this or this or
in
this.
a way, you don't mind that if it's somebody new, right? It's like, is this your expectation? I actually don't mind that. Is this your expectation? Am I doing what you were expecting me to do?
Am I on the right track? I know what you mean. Like, don't come in and present yourself as a like perfectly rational, nice, normal person, and then turn out to be like incredibly demanding, very difficult to work with.
Is it okay to say like share my priorities, prioritize my priorities, like the business priorities,
or like understand that my priorities are your priorities,
which are the business priorities, you know? And I think that's the part. Some people definitely have their own priorities, like which is their own agenda and stuff, and it doesn't necessarily tie into the business's priorities. But like this idea of being low maintenance. Anyway, back to this person that I hired, this individual. And like after about a week, I kept super creative. So I would create like the nicest bags, right? But kept handing me pictures of these bags, of these designs with thought bubbles over them. The thought bubbles would say, do you love this? Because I love this. And then the thought bubble on like the side seam would be like, I'm the cutest side seam I've ever seen. Right. So I was like, oh, this individual is very creative.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, partly I was like, oh, this is kind of cute. But then as the weeks went by, it would be like a picture of a bag and a thought bubble. And the thought bubble would say, you've no idea how hard it was to get this person to do this side seam. And I've spent more time working on this bag than anybody else in the department. And I would be like...
in the thought bubbles?
Yeah, in the thought bubbles, right? And then I would hear from people, God, that person's always crying in offices. Like, it's crying all the time. And this person was a team leader. And this person wasn't like, you know, I'm an assistant. This person was the head of the team. And this kind of came to light. And so finally and you really don't want to go over, you know, your team. Like it's really not a good look to be kind of digging for information, like, you know, a couple levels below. And I mean, I hate to say levels, I hate all that stuff, but like at the end of the day, in a hierarchy, there are levels, you know, it is. You're
managing this person, is managing these people, is managing,
And a huge part of your job, and actually I read a thing this week in, I think it was the Harvard Business Review, and it talked about how to make change successful, and it said like, I had managers who were really good managers, but what they made very clear was like, there is no back door. There is no back door to me. I'm happy to sit and have a conversation with you, but I'm going to listen to you. And then I'm going to have a conversation with your manager about like how to solve your problem. So like if you're not my direct report, if you, Rosemary, report to like somebody 2 or 3 levels below me, I'm absolutely, my door is open and I'm happy to have a conversation with you, but I'm never going to start brainstorming that problem. I'm going to listen to your concerns and then I'm going to say, thanks
I'm going to
a lot.
hand it off to the person whose job it is to deal with it.
And I think nobody's good at that. I don't even know that I'm super good at that. It gave me a lot of pause. I was like, oh, that's actually a really good approach. Like it should be clear from the beginning as well. Like, because if you say that to somebody, super happy to listen, like there's no judgment here. Happy to listen, happy to hear your perspective. I'll be talking to your manager.
But I don't know if I'd be happy with that as the person, because I'm going to you because I think my manager either can't or won't fix it for me.
Yeah, but I mean, very often you think your manager isn't even elevating it.
Yeah.
So if I hear about it and I'm your manager's manager, at least I'm aware. Yeah. And then if nothing happens, you can know that nothing happened because we all chose for nothing to happen. And you can just make your decision based on the company, right? You can say, okay, this company isn't willing to address the problem that I have. Therefore, I'm going to leave. I'm going to stay. I'm going to do whatever. I'm going to like put that aside. But I think a lot of people think that their manager is elevating it and often they're not. like, or often it's not being elevated in the way that you would want to explain it. You know, it might be like, oh, Rosemary has a problem, but like, it's not a big deal.
Oh gosh, it's all so exhausting.
I know it is. It's a lot of work, you know.
It's so hard, yeah.
But anyway, back to your woman. And I was just like, God, like when I hired her, right? And a lot of what we do, especially in America more than anywhere that I've ever worked before, is about like, once you hire somebody, you have to relocate them, because if you're not in a big city in America, they're not here of their own. They're not like knocking up to your door. Yeah. They're like, you know, you're having a conversation with somebody in Austin, Texas, and you're in Indiana.
Yeah.
So you move them and you move their family, and then they buy a house, and then you're like, this person's a terrible fit, and not cultural.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's a misnomer. Like, I think this idea of cultural fit is one that we have to get over. You know, you might not be a great cultural fit, but if you're good at your job and you're not like obnoxious, that should be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, as long as you're not causing a whole load of problems within the team.
Well, that's what I mean. That's not a cultural fit issue. That's potentially a you issue. But also, like, I remember in my career, like, I was told many times, you know, the culture here is amazing, and I was like, what? This culture is terrible, and that culture is toxic. And then finally, I got a job that I really liked the company. I was like, oh, I love this culture.
I do think that kind of thinking about cultural fits, though, is often, like, it sounds like it's something that should be important to the company, but I think actually it's much more important to the individual applying for the job. You know what I mean? Thinking about like if I go into a company, I care a lot about, you know, what the culture is like, or what the downtime is like, or basically all I can think about when I think about work culture is actually Facebook. I'm like, I care if there's a ping pong table. I care if there's free coffee on every floor. I care if there's snacks. You know what I mean? To me, that's what I think of when I think of culture. Whereas I feel like it's less important for the company that you fit into the culture per se than it is that you actually do the job. Maybe, although I'm sure there are companies that would argue that it's more important that you fit into the culture.
I've literally just noticed, looking over here at this window, how absolutely filthy it is.
I'll have to lend you my window vacuum.
You will. The entire window is full of, I mean, I suppose I'm being ridiculous now because I have an 11-year-old, but like, these fingerprints seem, I mean, you should take a picture of that, Rosemary, because you're good with the old photos. But like, that is the filthiest window ever. Actually, you know what? You should take a picture of that, and then we will window vacuum it and see if the window vacuum works.
It's hard to get a dirty window to come out in a picture. It's like the moon.
I can't even see outside. Do I live in the country? Can't tell you.
You do, Beatrice.
Well, I think the thing, you know, I think over the last 2 years, there's been a big backlash against the concept of corporate culture, right? So the idea that like you hire people and you say like you're a good culture fit is really wrong, apparently, because, and I mean, I don't disagree, because it's this idea of groupthink, which we all know to not be positive, right?
Yeah.
So if you're hiring people because you're hiring people, and you know, cultural, you say like they think like you, but realistically they also probably look like you.
Yeah.
And they have backgrounds like you, so that
there's not going to be college like you.
And there's not going to be a huge amount of dissent. It's the other thing. And like, we all know, or we should all know at this point, I think, that the more diverse, and I don't even mean demographically, but the more diverse your board is in terms of backgrounds and thinking etc.,
attitudes, the
better it will be. But I think that's actually only true. You can have a super diverse team, but if nobody's willing to listen to the cacophony of voices, then it doesn't matter. So it also, like, you can, you know, culture is one thing. And then also, back to my favorite, psychological safety, you have to have the ability to listen to those voices and those differences. Because if you, it's probably the same. It's probably part of the same thing, right? Like, if you think about what the definition of culture is, it probably is also the ability to actually have those voices mean something. Because if you think about, if you join a company and you don't feel listened to, then you don't feel like you're part of the culture. Therefore, the culture is one thing. Right? The culture is
the culture is outside of you. You're outside of the culture.
Exactly. Anyway, this one joined, and I wouldn't say she was culturally a good fit or a bad fit. I would just say that she was
unpredictable,
incredibly just disruptive. Right? Like, you know, provided zero, it was very, very, very creative, but just the amount of work to manage her, to keep her focused on like, this is what you need to get done this week, you know, was just made me immediately regret the hiring. And the person who had recommended her was in the building at the time, you know, and he was like, oh my God, she's amazing. She's this, she's so talented. And then when I was like, oh my God, have you ever had these problems with her? Yes. Entirely unpredictable, so hard to work with. Like, everybody in our previous company said the exact same thing. Never hire her. I'm like, you told me to hire her. Well, we were desperate. I'm like, We were never that desperate.
Yeah, but like also you could have you could have informed me, and at least I could have made that choice and known I was that desperate.
Yeah, but it also made me think like to really, 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 I can't say really enough times, really take people's recommendations with a pinch of salt.
Oh,
which I had never done before. I always thought like if somebody recommends them, that's actually
same.
like that pushes them up the ladder in my estimation.
Yeah, same. Because I'm like, obviously that person liked working with them, which is a huge part of the battle, right?
Yeah.
Do you mean that you're like, are people going to like working with this person, or is it going to affect the team negatively? Just to go back to the dating analogy slightly, right? So I don't feel like that person catfished you. I feel like that person just, like me, pretended to like Star Wars a bit more than they did, or like.
No, I think that person probably was recommended by a friend of a friend. But that friend of a friend never said to me, yeah, he or she actually treated his ex-girlfriend really badly.
Oh, right. Okay.
So that was actually my friend's fault.
Oh, yeah. Good point. But so what I was going to ask was, do you think you've ever been catfished by an employee or a potential employee in the sense of somebody saying, yes, I'm going to take this job where I do Excel all day, but I can't do Excel.
I'll tell you all about it in a second. But I just go back to that other one, which actually, now that in hindsight, now when you said that, I'm like, it's actually more dangerous because a recommendation from a friend immediately gives me the warm and the fuzzies. Don't you think? Like if somebody said to you, before you'd met Brandon.
Oh, yeah, true, yeah.
Before you met Brandon, like, he's my super nice guy. You would have been like, oh my God, great. And you'd be all in. You'd be, where before you were like semi all in. Okay, no, okay.
Always all in.
Before you were like all in, now you'd be all in, right? Like fully all in.
She's literally got her like two hands and fists, like, it's so in.
But you know what I mean,
with
right?
Power, yeah.
Well, I was
know.
thinking,
I know
recently I got another recommendation for, so a couple of open positions, obviously, due to the Great Resignation. So the Great Resignation, if anybody's not familiar with it, I'm sure everybody is that like this year, based on the fact that we've had 2 years of very, very low resignation rates across the world, probably, while people waited to see what happened
what
with
was
the
going to
pandemic,
come out in the Great Wash, yeah.
Or people who, obviously a lot of people were let go, people lost their jobs through no fault of their own due to the pandemic. But anybody who had a job was certainly staying very steadily with that job, even if they hated it. They were like, I am not leaving, right? And now I think I read a survey recently that said something like 70% of people are considering another job, looking for another job. But also, it's been a super tough 2 years. So I think pressures that people would not have felt, maybe, I mean, I don't know if that's like, the thing is that number was given to me out of context. I don't know if on a regular basis what percentage of people are actually looking for new jobs,
open to, yeah.
So 70% could be super high, could be normal. I actually wouldn't be surprised if it was that normal. But anyway, this recently, so we have an open job, and I got a call from somebody the other day going, I'm reaching out to a couple of my friends. I got this guy. This guy seems great. Can he come next week if, to visit if everybody's available, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, great. 2 seconds later, I write, so are they available? I get a text back. No, actually just heard that person's absolutely crap at their job. So we're not going to bring them. And I was like, what? Is this not one of your friends? No. It's a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. I was like, oh my God, like this is why you need to just treat everything so, super neutrally. But because so many people are leaving, all in one swell foop, as our dad likes to say, it's fell swoop, Dad. Think he knows that, Rosemary?
No. That goes in Dad's box of bullshit. Dr. Dad's box of bullshit. Poor Dr. Dad.
His big box of nonsense, you mean?
His big box of... No. Sorry, the box has suddenly got big. His small box of absolute nonsense.
Yeah, or his big box of nonsense. His tiny box of bullshit, a massive box of nonsense.
Your size doesn't matter when it comes to a box of nonsense. It's all in there.
This is hard. You're sick.
You have to have a light moment to these conversations about work, Beatrice.
Sick.
I wonder as well if people have not left their jobs as much because nobody really wanted to start a job during the pandemic. Nobody really wanted to start a job where you're working remotely, or, I think that was tough as well.
That's true.
But I was wondering, so like so many companies have these incentives for employees referring someone. Right. So I've reached out to people I barely know who I know work in places that offer incentives and been like, can you refer me for this job? And they've always said yes now. I don't know if they actually did. Maybe they referred me and then said,
but you only get the incentive if you get the job.
Yeah, no, I know.
Did you ever get the job?
I can't actually remember. I don't think so. My ex-boyfriend got a job through a friend of mine at the time and we didn't realise that she had an incentive. And afterwards we were like, well, she did well out of that. She could have brought us for a drink, but anyway.
She could have brought you for a drink. That's actually a great question. Like, what should you do with that incentive? I presume you should bring the person for a dinner at least.
Well, not if you don't know them, but like the person who linked you up. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I wonder if it actually incentivizes you or incents you, as Dad says. Incentivize is not a word.
What?
That can go in Dad's box of nonsense.
Excuse
as well.
me. Let me look this up right now. I guarantee you this is a word.
He said incentivize is a newfangled
I
word
guarantee it's
invented
in the
by
dictionary.
Americans. The
Just
actual
like
word is incent.
incent.
Yeah.
Does he not mean incense?
No,
Because that's what he
incent.
does to me all the time.
To incent someone.
To incentivize is, of course, a word. Hold on.
But when did it become a word?
Probably years ago. Incentivize. Provide with an incentive for doing something. Is it incentivize or incentivize? Like, sorry, is incentify a word? Incentive. Let's see if incent is even a word. Hold on, Dad. You're going to get your comeuppance now live on air or like recorded on air. Incent. To provide someone with, incentive. Didn't know that. Okay. When did what?
Well, no, I'm confused now. So I'll read out what just confused you. As verbs, the difference between incent and incentivize is that incent is to provide an incentive to a person or organization, while incentivize is to provide incentives for or to encourage.
Same thing. So the Oxford English Dictionary, Dad, traces its first use to 1968 when you would only have been 40.
He was 20 in his defense. But it makes me wonder.
You'll enjoy this. The New Yorker used it in 1987 in a sentence with Betamax, which has long since disappeared from the language.
Dad loved a Betamax or two.
No wonder poor Dad, he was up in arms like, we will not use incentivize and we will not ignore a good Betamax.
Oh my God, he did love
he
the
loved
Betamax.
It. We were brought out to pick a weekly Betamax on a weekly basis, obviously weekly.
We were brought out once a week to pick out our weekly Betamax on a weekly basis, once a week, bi-fortnightly.
Poor Dad. So does that mean that then incent is the first time you do it, and incentivize is like afterwards when you're trying to encourage the continuation of the behavior?
Incent seems to be used if you have material incentive. Whereas incentivize is if you're just encouraging someone.
Oh, so like if I have a bonus, if I say, listen, Rosemary, I'm going to give you 20 grand if you do this. If you can get this, if you can make this real, there's 20 grand sitting at the end of the rainbow.
I think that you would be incenting me. But if you were to say to me, Rosemary, I really want you to do this because it's really important to me, that would be to incentivize me.
Am I wrong? But does
stupid.
incent sound kind of like
it
creepy?
Sounds stupid. I'm incensed. Anyway, I wonder if to offer an incentive to your employees encourages them to recommend people who are crap, basically, or to care less. Because, like, I think in the olden days when, like, I remember when I worked at the Irish Times, I used to get a lot of people who I either went to college with or knew vaguely or, you know, was friends with saying, would you recommend me for a job? You know, do you have an in? Could you kind of put me in touch with this person? And I did put a few people in touch, but there were definitely a few people that I was like, yes, I will. And then I didn't because I was like, I don't want to be responsible for... I don't want it to come back on me for you being crap. Yeah.
But also, you know, again, another thing I read today, my favorite writer, Thomas Chamorro Premosic. I'm never sure.
Go on.
Anyway, he said a whole thing about like how, you know, reviews and ratings are so personal that it's hard, you know, performance is based on such emotional on such emotional KPIs, basically. Like I might say this is my KPI, but if you don't like how I did it, or if you don't like me, you'll be like, well, she didn't do it very well and she didn't do it blah, blah, even if I hit my numbers, you know. And if it's not numbers based in particular, like if it can't just be associated straight to like you drove X sales or you drove X revenue.
If it's not kind of maths, like tick the box.
And it's, so basically it said like an employee's performance is based very much on the manager's perception of that employee. So therefore, could you argue that like your friend who recommends somebody to you isn't actually clear on whether this person is good, bad or indifferent? You know, they can only go off of
they're coming from their own biased perspective anyway.
And they can only go off like what that person, their friend, has told them about their own performance.
Presented to them.
And very few people, very, very few people, because especially in reviews, very few people will say, I actually didn't do a good job. I didn't give my all. I came to the office unmotivated.
I don't think I've ever been in a review where I even got to say anything.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think any review I've ever had has just been a review of my performance by someone else. I haven't got to contribute.
Well,
you know what I mean?
We have what's called quarterly connections. So once a quarter, like every 3 months, you meet and you talk about how are you going? How are you performing against your goals? How are the goals going? You know, if something has gone wrong, right, or indifferent, whatever. And then you talk about that. Then you meet again. And then the review time is whatever goals you put in this, whatever goals you set up for yourself at the beginning of the year, then your manager will rate you against those goals.
God, it sounds like my New Year's resolutions. And then I get to December 31st and I'm like,
God.
oh my God, can't believe that was one of my New Year's resolutions. Forgot about that.
I wouldn't even need a rating. Just be like, let's go over here and measure the thickness of the dust on your rowing machine. God, I said to Don the other day, I was expecting like some love and attention. I was like, probably better get in that rowing machine. He goes, yeah, you probably better. It's been a long time.
Well, I said to Brandon yesterday something about somebody who's pregnant, right? And who we met somewhere and I was like, oh God, like, you know, she must be due now. And, you know, like fair play to her being out and about doing whatever. And he went, well, she stayed very active throughout her pregnancy. I know, Beatrice squinting and breathing through her nose. I was in a rage.
God. Anyway, so have I been catfished? I would say, Rosemary, on occasions, I have met people who have, but you know what? I have to be quite honest and say that there were red flags along the way that I did not pay attention to.
Do you think in hindsight the speech bubbles were a red flag? Because the speech bubbles then turned into like passive aggressive feedback.
Well, I wouldn't have known that
the
speech bubbles were a red flag. I think the speech bubbles were a performance red flag that I immediately copped onto, right? But like it wasn't as if during the interview process I could have latched onto these, right? But I do wonder, I've had all types of things. I've done like workshops with people. I've had them meet with their teams. I've had them do projects, especially because I'm in a creative field. Like you have them do a project, and that's the other thing. It's hard to know as well. Have you given a really good project? Because there's an onus on you too as a project giver to make sure that it's super clear. They're, really good guardrails around it. Because otherwise you can kind of say like, tell me what you think this brand could be in 3 years. And then they go off and they could do like the most creative things. You're like, no, really, I was just looking for like an evolution of today,
Yeah.
So that's not fair.
I also, as a potential employee, I always hated doing projects because I felt like, well, not projects, but I hated doing, give us 7 feature ideas and like a rough outline of how and I'm like, I just given you free work. To annoy me.
I was going to say, I think that seems a bit ridiculous, right? Because I feel like I would hope that with a team of, 8 people or 3 people, like I don't need your free work. So it is truly a case of, can you provide this? But I also understand that from a creative person's perspective, having done lots of projects myself, I do go, this is ridiculous. This is a huge amount of work. And like, I think that it's like, how do you contain it within what's reasonable? Like what's reasonable to ask somebody to do who has a full-time job, who's one of 5 candidates, like
who might be traveling for interviews.
I don't think eight features is a real thing, but like if it's literally give me the title of these, I wouldn't think that was unreasonable, and give me one actual
I think any journalism jobs I've gone for, like when you said a team of 8, it's never been a team of 8, it's been like a team of 2.
But like I meant that I've also had a team of 2 where we've given people projects, but I think it's more about like, I think people give projects based on show me everything you can do, whereas what you really need to figure out is like, what do you need this person to do?
Yeah.
What are the 3 big things that you need this person to be able to bring to the team? Is it like team management? Because in which case, what does a project prove?
Yeah. And also don't give them a project about like the evolution of the brand if they're going to end up doing this very one particular small part of it.
Exactly. So I would more say now it's like, if you want them to manage a team, think about how they would present the kickoff portion of a project that would then allow a team to like evolve from there, etc. So I think that's, it's much more about thinking like what's appropriate for the role that they're going to have. But anyway, was I ever catfished? I think, yes, there were a couple of times when, I hired people who it was like, you're going to be the head of this team and you're going to be super creative. And then they're like, well, when they got there, well, I've actually never done this before. I can't actually turn on a computer and I used to just buy everything externally. So, this is hard for me. Like, why does your team design everything themselves? Why don't they buy everything? Like,
does that happen to you?
Yeah. And it's like, how did I actually manage to hire this person? Like, how did I miss this?
Yeah.
And I think that the big red flag in this case was that 3 people came up to me and said, this is bad. That person's like sweater is extremely odd. But it was so odd. I can't like, it was a crochet sweater that had holes the size of.
Is this the person who wanted to buy everything or the person with the speech bubbles?
Person who wanted to buy everything. And it wasn't to do with like, I don't think that implied like you wouldn't be good at your job, but it was like there's something odd about somebody who's wearing a crochet sweater that has holes in it the size of a saucepan, right?
Oh, so like tear holes, not purposeful holes.
No. The crochet itself was like crochet point up here on my chest, crochet point down here on my stomach. Like the actual crochet was just a huge, big open thing. And I was like, why are we being so weirdly judgmental about this person's clothes? But in hindsight, I was going, that
There were
person's
holes in
clothes-
more than the crochet.
Yes, that person's clothes were maybe reflective of that person themselves, you know, but like, that's not how I think, you know? So I was going, that's weird. Anyway, so that was odd.
Have you ever been a catfish in a work scenario? Because I'm trying to think. I definitely have. Like, I've definitely given the impression that I'm better. I mean, back to the Excel thing, that I'm like great at Excel and I'm not.
Well, I think I would like to say no, but I think that anybody who's had me help them with their resume would say probably yes, because I do not think you should ever put on a resume something that's factually untrue. But I also think that if you say, like, I have, you know, average Microsoft Office skills, but in fact, you know that you have the skills to be an excellent Microsoft office user, you should say, you know, superior Microsoft Office skills, because you could get them in the 2 weeks that it would take for you to go from one job to another if they made that clear.
Could
you know, or
could you?
like, you know, good Adobe Illustrator skills, like excellent, proficient. I mean, I now that I think about it, like writing a resume, I definitely think writing a resume, I think you should write the resume for the job that you want, not the job that you have, actually.
Oh.
And I think that that's something that people are really bad at and really modest. Like when we wrote your resume, you were like, oh, I mean, I feel like I've kind of done a couple of blog things. And I was like, well, like, have you won any awards? I mean, I've won 1 or 2. You'd won 11 and you didn't even know what like half of them were. So, I mean, I think people are very modest, and it's partly like that's not how Americans are, but but that's not really true, because I've also rewritten my friends' resumes in America and been like, are you good at this? Do you have this? Do you have that skill? Can you do this? And they're like, well, I'm like, could you do it if you needed to? Yes. That's it. Could you do it if you needed to? That's what you put on your resume.
Still don't think I could do Excel if I needed to.
You could. You absolutely go on LinkedIn, you get an advanced Excel course, and you would do it.
I feel like there are job interviews I've gone to where I have misrepresented myself, but almost accidentally. Like, I remember going for one where they were like, you know, we think that coming from kind of a creative writing background, you're going to really struggle with this being too boring or this being too kind of monotonous, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I just really want like something that I can
remember this.
come in and like do 9 to 5 and go home. And I really, you know, like I really miss being able to be creative in my spare time. And I feel like being creative full time has really taken away that. Oh my God, hated it.
I remember that you were like, they said this to me and I got the job. I'm delighted. On the Monday, you were like, it's terrible. I should have listened to them.
I should have listened to them. Yeah.
But I mean, if it were to happen again, would you be like, I'm going to listen to them, or just be like, you're wrong?
No, I'd be like, you're wrong. I'd be like, I just want to, but back to my original point, I just wanted to get out of the house and earn some money.
Well, I mean, it more makes me think about like the people who, you know, not the people, all of us, when we sign up to like create our online dating profile or our online work profile, that we just need to be a little bit, probably we need to hone in more on like, what job are we actually trying to get? What boyfriend, girlfriend are we actually trying to get? Because we're all sending out, in my opinion, totally wrong
dodgy messages.
In many cases, deliberately.
To to think about you saying you're not applying for the job you have, for the job you want. I'm like, not applying for the boyfriend I have, but the boyfriend I want. But also within reason. You know what I mean?
It's probably more like the boyfriend that I actually want is not the boyfriend that I think I want.
Oh, well,
right?
that's different. But you didn't go to therapy to do your online dating profile.
No, but I mean, like, if you think about the guys that I'm attracted to, I mean, past tense. That's not, or the jobs that I think I want. And then you end up in a job and you're like, oh, do I actually want to be in the job that works 24 hours a day, that has like no spare time? I mean, wasn't there a whole job you signed up for, like a PR job, and you were like, and they were kind of going, you're going to have to be at 4 nights a week. You're going to have to do this, that, and the other. And you were like, that's not, you know, it's like, and the other thing is, it's not that I don't mind. It's not that I mind being at 4 nights a week, but I want to be at 4 nights a week with my friends and my life. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be at 4 nights a week smiling at some like stupid party with stupid people.
Imagine, I'd be terrible at PR. I'd be like, Rosemary, stop scowling at that person. Like, my face. It's my face. I'm just tired. It's my face.
They'd be like, Beatrice, stop scowling. I'd be like, I'm smiling. This is my smile. This is me smiling.
There is a business idea there though, in like doing 5-minute consultations for people on their online dating, because nobody wants to spend a lot of money on their online dating. Do you know what I mean? But like writing people's online dating profiles for them.
Why do you share all business ideas on the podcast? I'd love to know.
You know what? I thought of a really good idea.
Did you?
Another really good idea, yeah. I'm going to tell you because I'm never going to do it. This is why I'm happy to share ideas. I've no ambition. I don't want to do them myself. But here's an idea. Babysitter mode on your iPhone. So you just tap babysitter mode and it comes up and it goes, who's your babysitter? And you tap Beatrice or Rachel or Kim or whoever. And then for the rest of the night that you have babysitter mode on, that's the only person whose calls and texts get through to your phone. Now, you can set that up in Do Not Disturb, but it's a few more steps that I don't really understand. It sounds complicated.
Oh.
But I feel like this is straightforward. Babysitter mode. My babysitter is Liam. He's the only person who can call or text.
Do you know what? I thought your business idea was going to be a bit bigger than that, but okay.
Okay, thank you all so much for listening to Not Without My Sister. If you have ever catfished anyone online dating or in work, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to hear about it in great detail. Email us notwithoutmysis@gmail.com. Leave us a comment on our Instagram at Not Without My Sister, or you can get us individually at Rosemary McCabe, at Beatrice McCabe. A little reminder that our Patreon for the month of March, all new patrons will have their pledge donated to help the people of Ukraine, and we'll meet that pledge. So you get all of our back catalogue of exclusive episodes. You get all of your weekly episodes ad-free. You get a direct pipeline to message us through Patreon, which people don't actually do, but you're more than welcome to. And 99% of the time I will respond.
Oh my God, I would respond, except I've forgotten the sign-in.
Oh, for God's sake.
I would love that too. You know what? It reminded me though, like, honestly, I was thinking about the amount of people who now recently I've interviewed and they're like, oh my God, you are my number one choice. I would love to work with you. You are my number one choice. I have 4 other options. You're my number one choice. And I go, great. Well, I'll message you with the details. And then I write later on, I go, so shall we chat again tomorrow or the next day? Crickets. And I go, this is what made me think this is what it's like dating. And I'd be like, they would be like, you are my dream. You are the most amazing. I can't even believe that I met you
Beatrice.
online.
It's Game of Thrones guy.
Oh, Rosemary, I didn't want to say it, but yeah.
Bye.
Winter's coming.
Goodbye. Winter is here. Winter's never going away, Beatrice. Not Without My Sister is produced by Liam Garrity. Sound and original music by Don Kirkland. And our original illustration is by Lindsay Nielsen.
Who's there? Who's there?
Petrified, the horror fiction anthology podcast from a darker Ireland, is back.
It's a big house, Laura. Mom, let me in.
Petrified tells the chilling tales of ordinary people encountering the supernatural and their terrifying fates.
Oh, dear God! Reverend Mother! Help!
CrimeReads.com said Petrified is extremely well written, expertly produced, and brilliantly acted.
Please. Don't make any noise. Please.
Petrified, Series 2 begins March 30th, wherever you get your podcasts.
You're not afraid out here, are you?